Hello, my name is Arturo Bris. I am the director of the IMD World Competitiveness Center, and I am extremely happy that because of the publication of a recent book on world competitiveness by Professor Stéphane Garelli, we are going to have a conversation about that. Stéphane Garelli is not only the former director of the IMD World Competitiveness Center, is also the founder of the center, and as such, a world international authority on world competitiveness. Stéphane, hello.
Hello.
Why is world competitiveness relevant today?
First, thank you very much for hosting me. World competitiveness is very relevant. Actually, competitiveness itself is not very new. It's probably embedded in our DNA, just like cooperation and survival and reproduction and mobility. I think what has changed over the time is the scope of competitiveness. It was very local, very regional, and at a certain stage, it became global, world competitiveness. The universe has been growing on competitiveness, and the Big Bang occurred on actually the 18th of December of 1998, when the leader of China, Deng Xiaoping, you remember, came with the open door policy of China. And this changed completely the rules of the game. So quite simply put, competitiveness is nothing else than the ability to solve problems better than the others. So in a way, a plumber can be competitive if he comes and repairs your sink, a doctor if he cures you, or a company if it's making profit. But I think, as I said, the universe has been changing, and for us at IMD, we started to look inside it and what it meant for companies, because we are company-oriented, and also for nations, because the big revolution has also been that the roles of nations has been more important than before, and that's why we went into the World Competitiveness Reports and the World Competitiveness Center.
And it amazes me that 30, 40 years ago, I think the world was still talking about GDP and GDP per capita as the natural metrics, and today, thanks also to your work, obviously, that today there is a consensus that competitiveness is the right metric of country success. How, I want to ask you, how, because you said we're in a business school, how does this help companies? That is, how does the competitiveness of your country help companies, or how thinking about competitiveness help executives making better decisions?
I think that when we had this big bang on the universe of competitiveness, what has really been changing is that in the past, company was very much relying on exports. And exports for a market was basically, you get a product, you go to the post office, you ship your product, and you pray it doesn't come back. But suddenly, when you go in countries like China, when they were opening, export was not enough. You had to go into direct investment. And this was a major revolution. I remember the first time I was to China, leading a delegation, I asked one of the CEOs, why are you there? And he said, I come to visit my machines. So I said, what does it mean? He said, yes, for years we have been exporting, shipping machines. And I asked, are you happy? Yes. Can I come and see you? No. Do I know what you are doing? No. And now for the first time I can come and say, we can build a factory. The moment you start to go in foreign direct investment, you need more information. You need to know more about the policy of the country. You need to know more about the trade unions, about even the value system, what the people are thinking. And this is what we have done into the World Competitiveness Report, is to take, as you mentioned rightly, Arturo, this very broad approach where we said that actually the success of a country is not only about GDP, it's not only about investment or export, it's much more than that. It's about technology, it's about education, it's about the efficiency of the government. All those things together really explain the success of a country. And this was the first thing, just to answer your question, which company needed. They needed to benchmark what was happening in this country compared to the other one.
And to me, it fascinates me today that when you look at national strategies, like the most famous one, Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia,
yeah.
They're incorporating competitiveness as a key performance indicator. In your book, you look at several examples, including China or the United States. There are interesting case studies. what are the most surprising cases that you can tell us in the last years or even now when it comes to competitiveness? Which are the countries that you think that they are doing a fantastic job?
I think that what we have learned together probably is that we should not tell people what to do, but we should benchmark, which is this country has been successful, maybe we can learn from it. Another country has been less successful, maybe we can also learn from mistakes. And I think that every country has probably its own approach to competitiveness, but should have a kind of educated guess or decision because they know what the others are doing. So this is what we are done. Now, to answer your question, I think that today a number of countries are surprising us in good for competitiveness. You mentioned Vision 2030 of Saudi Arabia, no doubt. I think Saudi Arabia is doing an incredible job today, but also because they have a lot of things that some other countries are missing. The first one is space. It's a huge country. It's 2.2 million kilometers. It's larger than Alaska and Texas together almost. So you have space. Now, a lot of countries today do not have space to create factories, etc. They have a very young population. They have a very fast decision making. I think we have seen in competitiveness that what really counts is when people can take decision quickly and that behind you have an administration to implement quickly. This probably explains the success, not only of Saudi Arabia, but of the Gulf countries, of China to a certain extent. And we have other countries which are doing a very good job at defining competitiveness, but the implementation is very slow. Sometimes it's blocked by an excess of regulation. We have seen that in Europe, for example. Maybe sometimes you have the good idea, right idea, but it takes too much time because competitiveness is a race.
I remember very vividly that when I took over the reins of the center, and I was still learning a lot from you because I was digesting all this concept. I heard you saying that, competitiveness is like a salad. We know the ingredients, but every country will cook the salad in a different way. And a Thai salad is not necessarily worse than a Mexican salad. And I love that analogy because it's actually the message that we should be conveying, that you cannot try to become the Singapore of Africa or the Switzerland or the Middle East because each country will have their own approaches. World competitiveness, so how does it fit in a business school? We're both part of a business school, IMD. Our executives come here interested in leadership, in marketing or strategy. What is the room for world competitiveness in our school?
I think the terms of competitiveness itself is probably the most important one that most business leaders coming here are interested in. Not only because, they will be judged on results, and if they don't make the results, they won't have a very big lifetime in the company. But I think what is important is that it is, as you have mentioned also, it's a very broad approach to business. It's not only looking at marketing, at production, etc. It's putting everything together. And then at the end of the day is to say, well, even if we have the best recipe, how can we convince people that we go ahead? So it's about leadership. It's about motivation. It's about telling people, yes, it makes sense for the company, but actually it makes sense also for you, because competitiveness is not only an issue for companies or nations, it's also something which is very important for people. At the end of the day, they are going to say, why should I be competitive? What's in it for me? And this is also what we are trying to touch upon in a business school like IMD, is to say, so what? It's not only we should do it, but why do we do it? And I think this is what is important, also to motivate people, otherwise they won't go.
Interesting. One last question. Looking forward, obviously we have new technologies, we have fragmentation, competitiveness and world competitiveness, and you say in your book is a life concept. So where do you see the future changes and what are the challenges in the future, not only for nations, but also for us as a center? We try to measure competitiveness and success. What do you think are the future challenges that technology and geopolitics are bringing into us?
I think the environment in which we are going to operate is going to be definitely fragmented or fractured, whatever people call it. It doesn't mean deglobalization. I think we believe here that globalization will continue. It's just that the rules of the game are not going to be global anymore. And I think every country will have a tendency to have its own rules of the game, industrial policies, tariffs, etc. The second thing, which I think is important, is that the multilateral system is under attack, no doubt. The discussion are less and less about economics and more about politics. I remember that we are here in Switzerland next to the World Trade Organization. A lot of the conflicts were based on destruction of employment. Now a lot of the conflicts are on national security. How do you deal with this? So this is one of the big issues that we will have to look in the future. I think also that we are going still to see some multilateral organization. We are going to see more and more bilateral agreements, no doubt. A country like China has almost 30 of them. We are going to see also a lot of ad hoc agreements. Countries getting together, small country, 7, 8, and saying we share a lot of things in common. For example, developing defense in Europe. Some countries are getting together, and I think this is going to be important, the SAFE program. So we are going to have multi-layers. Regarding the future, and I think you are, and definitely you are right from that, there are new dimensions in competitiveness, and one of them is definitely about cities. And since you are the expert on cities, and you have produced also a report, and tell us more about cities and competitiveness.
No, it's true that, you know, we realize that when you look at countries like China or the United States, thinking of a global ranking or a global indicator was very difficult. And that's why we started to move into cities and regions, but the cities is actually showing a great potential because there is more and more interest in urban development and the role that technology can play. We're very happy because now the IMD Smart City Ranking is the world reference on smartness. And in many countries, they see a ranking as very relevant because it is built on a simple principle. And the principle is that the objective of technology is to make people's life better. Yeah. So we went by an assessment. We developed a methodology where we ask citizens what their needs are, and then we just decide or assess to what extent technology solves those problems. And very similar to what you said about competitiveness, then we find that obviously the solutions in Boston are not the same as the solutions in Medellin, in Colombia, because they have different problems. And I think looking forward, that's going to be one of our most important activities as well. It's going to keep us busy.
I'm sure you will be busy. I have a very last question also. I've seen the ranking of the United Nations on the largest city in the world. I think Jakarta is #1 now. And we are speaking about tremendous number, 34 million, etc. Is it manageable?
No. Well, no, it's manageable, but you know, to answer your question factually, what we find, for example, in our ranking is that the most prosperous cities tend to be mid-size.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is not a small village, and it is not a Chinese city. Mm-hmm. It's a city like Zurich, okay, or Boston, which are mid-size. And that's what you say. You cannot just manage a 35 million city.
It's not a city anymore.
Exactly. It's a small country,
and
then you need institutions that have to operate like in a country, not like in a city. That's why, for example, some of the top ranked cities in our ranking are much more countries than cities. I'm thinking about Singapore and Dubai, which are like mini countries. But
they are managed as a country, but they are cities.
Yes.
So this is the future of competitiveness.
Voila.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. And thanks so much, Stéphane, as well.
Thank you very much. I think it's in good hands now. We can continue that way.